Hunter Biden is in the house, and man, he's got 9 criminal charges in a 56 count indictment that we are going to go through, and we're going to do it with the help of Garrett Ziegler, who is the author. You may know this book. We've talked about it a lot, The Report on the Biden Laptop. And so he is going to be joining us at some point on the program today, and we're going to get into a bunch of different stuff. Predominantly, we're going to talk about the indictment that is out there, because the indictment is now out. It's 56 pages. It's out of California, and we're going to go through it in detail. Mr. Ziegler, as you know, has a lot of inside scoop. This thing's 56 pages, but his summary is a lot longer than that. So we're going to ask ourselves, what is missing, what's included, and what is not? And then we're going to jump into our after party. If you want to join us for our after party, you know where to go there. It's watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so I think without any further ado, the man of the hour is here. If we're good to go, we will bring him on aboard. And Mr. Garrett Ziegler is in the house, my friends. And so, Garrett, welcome aboard. Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You sound great, my friend. It's very good to see you here today.
Thank you very much. And I am completely prepped. Got all 56 right here. I've read through it twice. I'm very excited to be talking with you. I have read all the statements that you just alluded to. So like they do at the beginning of depositions, I am ready to go. There's some meat on the bones here, but it's of a scrawny guy. So there's meat there, but not as much as there could be.
Well, that was my initial thought on this thing, because just to give the audience a little bit of background here, we've had several conversations before here on this channel, but for people who may not know you, right, you are Garrett Ziegler. You're one of the founders, creators, Marco Polo, and you were the author of this book. It's The Report on the Biden Laptop.
My mother has sent me a screenshot of your show, and she circled the report on your bookshelf right behind your right ear.
Tucked up right there. It's a masterpiece. And remind me, how many pages is in this thing?
644. It was a team effort. We created Marco Polo as a nonprofit private investigative group. We have private investigators on our board, and they're involved in every facet of the research. And so we're not a political entity. We are not interested in putting something out that is not completely baked. And that causes us to be like the 4th or 5th time you hear about something, but we hope that it's the most granular. And like you said, this is my 4th time on your program, and I love it deeply. And there are so many things in this report that can corroborate the indictment. In fact, when I've been traveling, but when I catch my breath, we're going to create a Twitter thread that links the exact email on our site from BidenLaptopEmails.com that is referenced in the indictment. So never before, I think, in American history can you read an indictment and, they'll quote emails in many indictments, right? Tax fraud, wire fraud, drug dealing. But now the people will be able to see the exact email metadata referenced in the indictment. I love it.
Yeah, and there's a lot in this report that you've drafted, and just for anybody who wants to get a copy of it, they can go to marcopolousa.org, get a copy there so they can follow along with anything you're saying. I mean, it's one of the most sourced compendiums that I've ever seen. It's very, very impressive work. And so the thing that we noticed, right, is this is a 56 pager. Yours is 600 plus pages. So there's a lot there that is not here in the indictment. But my thought is we just jump into the indictment and kind of
and I will speak only if my value add is material. So there might be 2 pages that I don't speak, and one time I want to dive into something. So pretend like you're on, like you don't have a guest, and when I have something of value, I'll jump in.
Well, let's do it. And my thought was we try to get to at least through the first 15, 16 pages on it, because that's really where the meat and potato is before we jump into the counts and the charges. But there is a lot here, and I think this is probably a good setup so that the audience can read and follow along with us. But my friends, this is the case. This is another Hunter Biden indictment. And just for a little context, this is not out of Delaware. Okay. On this channel, we've been following the Delaware case, and we have really had some serious criticisms about Hunter Biden and his defense team, and really why they should have taken the deal a long time ago. There was this, in my opinion, a rigged plea deal that was proffered forward. They were in court. The whole thing was kind of set up to go. The judge in Delaware, Judge Norica, asked a couple of questions, made the whole thing derailed when Hunter didn't answer it appropriately. And now we're facing a whole new slew of charges. And so the summary here is we've got 9 new charges. We've got 6 misdemeanors and 3 additional felonies in an entirely different district. And this comes on the back of Hunter's lawyer, Abby Lowell, basically getting very aggressive with the DOJ, threatening them that we're going to go subpoena Trump, and we're going to go subpoena Bill Barr, and we're going to go, after all these people. And they were calling the DOJ corrupt. And Hunter was the victim of this selective prosecution, even though his daddy runs the DOJ, runs the executive branch through Merrick Garland and this entire entity. So they started to get very aggressive with the DOJ, and we read through David Weiss's, don't speak in high regard of the guy because of how rigged it was at the outset, but now he's been kind of backed into a corner, and he responded saying your indictment, your request for subpoenas are absolutely ridiculous. And it was a little bit of a surprise to me to wake up to this new indictment. I actually wasn't expecting it this quickly. I thought that maybe we'd see some escalation elsewhere. So any comments on that before we jump in?
The number one, I think that a lot of credit needs to be given to the IRS whistleblowers. The press release announcing the first plea deal attempt was June 20th, and the Congress, specifically the Ways and Means Committee, voted to release the transcript of Gary Shapley on June 7th. And so what we've had here is people trying to save face. So this is, like you said, obviously a step up from an aborted plea deal. There are some meat on the bones, and not every indictment is 56 pages. They put material in here that did not need to be in this indictment. It's all true. But the breakdown, for example, of the pimps and hookers and all the things he tried to write off on their taxes, you can have a bare bones 5-page indictment. You don't have to go into the evidence. The grand jury's heard the evidence. The evidence is only in need for a trial for you to convince another jury of one's peers. So they put in this a lot of things that are going to make the Bidens uncomfortable. Kevin Morris is smoking on his bong today. They're not feeling well. This is embarrassing for them. And I have the privilege, and Marco Polo has the privilege, of being sued by both the people we're talking about right now. So the president's son is suing us in the Central District of California, the very district that you're talking about here. And Kevin Morris, the guy who comes up in this indictment known as a personal friend, he's not only a personal friend. That was a mistake on the prosecutor's part. But Kevin Morris is suing us in state court. And since I spoke with you last, we won one cause of action. Kevin Morris owes us legal fees on approximately $45,000. And we're appealing in California state court the other 4 causes of action that Judge Richard Epstein should have granted immediately. So let's dive in. The 2 gentlemen who we're going to be reading their writing is Leo Weiss and Derek Hines. They go by a lot of nicknames. They're both 6'5". They're both looked at as G-men type of straight-laced guys. Leo Weiss worked at the Congressional Ethics Office for a while. But these guys are also lackeys of Rod Rosenstein. And so they're the ones who wrote this. And like I've said before, it's a limited hangout, but it's much less of a limited hangout. What I mean by that is they want to be able to hold this up and say, hey, look, nobody's above the law in the United States. And one more thing I'll say before we dive in is Abby Lowell made a statement today, Robert, that said if it weren't for his last name, Hunter Biden wouldn't have been charged with this. Hilariously, I agree. If Hunter Biden were Hunter Smith, he'd be charged with more and different crimes like money laundering, FARA violations, and sex trafficking. So this is a start, but we're not holding our breath.
Yeah, this was the statement, I believe. Let me see if I can share that one. Yeah, this was Abe Lowell's statement. And I think it's a little hard to read it, but yeah, based on the facts and the law, if Hunter's last name was anything other than Biden, the charges in Delaware, now in California, would not have been brought. And, there's the rest of his statement. We can come back to that. But just to go back to the point that you were making and, this issue that there's a little bit more here that maybe meets the eye. Obviously, the case is United States of America versus Robert Hunter Biden. The indictment's coming out of the Central District of California. And it says here, just in the introduction, that defendant Robert Hunter Biden was a Georgetown and a Yale-educated lawyer. And then the next word, right, which we all knew, and it's like, well, okay, he kind of botched this case with all of those Ivy Leagues. But the next one that really stands out is the lobbyist, right? Because there's a lot of talk that maybe why wasn't he charged with FARA violations if he's lobbying on behalf of foreign entities like CEFC? And he wasn't charged with any of those types of crimes here. But maybe that's just like, hey, that's the next step for us.
Yeah, that's what justice requires. It would be the next step.
Yeah. So they say, okay, we know he's a lobbyist. He's a consultant. He's a business person. They say beginning in April 2018, and we're going to pay special attention to the dates here because of when Trump's in office, when Joe was leaving office under the Obama term, then when he came back in. So at the time, beginning April 2018, he's a resident of LA, saying at all times that we're about to talk about, Hunter served on the board of the Ukrainian industrial conglomerate and a Chinese private equity fund. He also negotiated, executed contracts, agreements for businesses, legal services, and was paid millions of dollars in compensation to him and his domestic corporations. Both of these we've talked a lot about, Owasco, the PC, and the LLC. Saying in addition to his business interests, Hunter was an employee of a multinational law firm also working in an of counsel capacity, which is, this little trick that a lot of law firms will do when they want to loosely associate with somebody. You're not really an employee of the firm. You're kind of like a contract lawyer with the firm, but there's really loose, depending on the state, there's kind of loose agreements on how it all works. And so you can kind of say, I'm at the law firm if you're the of counsel attorney, but you're not technically there like an employee or a partner. And so it's just, in other words, you can kind of sell your name, right? You can lend your name name.
Yes, and the value add that Marco Polo has, and what we're going to be doing on Twitter, but we'll do here first, is we will figure out and name each of these entities. So for us, for Marco Polo, multinational law firm is not specific enough. This is Boy Schiller Flexner. So what we're going to be doing is going through the document and writing down the names and then putting that in the document on our tweets. So this is Boy Schiller Flexner in point number 3.
Amazing. And where's the best place for people to follow you and support you? Obviously, you've got litigation going on. And so we just want to make sure people know that.
Thank you. All of our social media is Marco Polo 501c3, denoting our nonprofit status. And our legal defense fund, we've had $180,000 in legal fees just since May, Robert, is fightbiden.org. Can't make it more easier and easier to remember. So fightbiden.org and Marco Polo 501c3. Importantly, Boy Schiller Flexner paid Hunter approximately $215,000 per year. He didn't even maintain an office there. His job was to be a rainmaker. He just got Boy Schiller clients, made $215,000 a year to do basically nothing but talk on the phone.
Yeah, good work if you can get it. And the last name Biden is certainly something that helped, no doubt. So they continue. The government tells us that Hunter, he engaged in a 4-year scheme to not pay at least $1.4 million. And that was self-assessed. So he assessed that on himself. Federal taxes that he owed for the years 2016 through 2019. Just a quick point. I know we'll pick up the pace on this a little bit, but in terms of the dates, right? We also got to remember that there were a bunch of other potential charges that they never brought because the statute of limitations expired and they all just literally expired, right? The law says that when there is evidence of a crime, the government knows about it. You got to bring the criminal charges within a certain period of time or else evidence can expire, right? Even in, DUI case, like you don't want to hold a blood vial for 25 years and then charge somebody because the blood can go bad. Evidence expires, witness memory expires. And so you have a certain time period. You also want to incentivize the government to actually bring the charges, not just dilly-dally. And so conveniently, many of these investigations with Hunter just took forever, just left on and on and on and on. And then some of the major charges actually dropped off. Okay, so carrying on. From in or about January 2017 through in or about August 15th, 2020, and to evade the assessment of taxes for another tax year, he also filed false returns in about February 2020. Now, in furtherance of this scheme, Hunter did a bunch of things. A, he subverted the payroll and the tax withholding process of his own company, which was a Wasco PC. He withdrew millions of dollars from the PC outside of the payroll and the tax withholding process, which was all manuals or whatever they were doing, and it was bypassing it. He spent millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle, and we have summaries of that later on in the document, rather than paying his tax bills. In 2018, he stopped paying his outstanding overdue taxes for 2015 that he was due. He willfully failed to pay his taxes in the years 16, 17, 18, 19, all on time, even though he had the money to do it. And he also failed to file his 2017 and 18 tax returns on time. And when he did finally file his 2018 returns, he included false business deductions in order to evade the assessment of the taxes and to reduce the substantial tax liabilities that he faced coming up in February 2020. Carrying on, they say the defendant also made millions of dollars in the 4 years from 2016 to 2020. Now, I think this is also interesting because, by allowing this to continue on and allowing those older cases to expire, they don't have to spend time on those years when he was in office, when Biden was actually the vice president. So it's convenient for them, but they carry on. They say between 2016 and October 15, 2020, which would be all the Trump years, Hunter individually received more than $7 million in total gross income. Now, this included in excess of $1.5 million in 2016, $2.3 million in 2007, $2.1 million in 18, $1 million in 19, and $188,000 in 2020. So a major drop off there. In addition, from January through October 2020, Hunter also received $1.2 million in financial support to fund his extravagant lifestyle.
Now, this is where our plaintiffs comes in. Kevin Morris is going to come up very quickly, and he's going to be referred to as a personal friend. That is false. Why can we say that? Because he's not just a personal friend. Omitting material context, you can be charged in SEC crimes and other things by, if you say something true, but it's incomplete, that statement can still be false. And by calling him only a personal friend, it's false. Kevin Morris worked with Hunter Biden's tax accountants to ease considerable pressure politically from Hunter Biden having these tax debts. So that financial support came from and the whistleblowers, I love them, but they did transpose his first and middle name. It's Patrick Kevin Morris. We know that. Kevin goes by his middle name, as does Hunter.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so we'll hear more from him, but he's funding 1.2 million bucks, right? And this is just a guy, right? I mean, this is not.
Yep. Made all of his money from being the attorney for the South Park creators. And again, if Hunter were normal people, when they fall on tough times and the money dries up, maybe they rent a 2-bedroom in San Bernardino. No, not our princeling Hunter. Kevin Morris shelled out 20 grand a month for him to live on a canal in Venice just because he's a princeling. So Hunter exacerbated all of this. He has agency. Everybody treats him like a little baby with kids' gloves. He's a 53-year-old man.
Yes, and he had a lot of money, and it all just went somewhere, right? And the question is, what was the justification for him to continue to get this money? What was he trading on? But here's one example that the government identifies for us, right? This is David Weiss and the special counsel's office. They take us over into Burisma. They say in or about April 2014, which is, again, is much further back than we were talking about previously, Hunter joined the board of Burisma, which was a Ukrainian industrial conglomerate. They say Burisma agreed to pay Hunter $1 million a year. That was in monthly disbursements. We talked about those numbers. There were 83
Real
and
quick,
a third.
Addendum. The prosecutors made a mistake. They should have said Ukrainian-based. Burisma Holdings Limited was actually domiciled in Cyprus because it was easier to set up Maltese bank accounts to launder money.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a little bit of technical detail there.
That's what our report is for.
I know, man.
Ukrainian-based Cypriot-registered gas company. Joey says his son's done nothing wrong.
Yes, and if you take a look at this report, you can go take a look at the PDF at marcopolousa.org. You'll see what I'm talking about. There are footnotes. It is detailed as can be. And so it's very, very impressive work. So they are located really in Cyprus. It is Burisma, Ukrainian-based company. They're paying Hunter $1 million a year. In March 2017, take a look at that date. Okay, so Joe Biden is now exiting. Burisma decides to reduce his compensation from $1 million a year to $500,000 a year, even though they kept him on the board until about April 2019. A lot less valuable when Daddy's not the president.
It'd be
or
like
the vice
Hunter
president.
having a hooker when he was at Georgetown, and then he meets her 20 years later and says, "Hey, I really like you, but you're just not as good looking. I'll pay you half."
Right.
Goes down 50% when his daddy's not in office.
Right. The terms have changed. What are you going to do for us now? So that's very convenient. Now, as a result, he got a total of $1 million in 2016, $630,000 in 2017, $500,000 in 2018, and then $160,000 in 2019. So you see that dropping off pretty significantly, right? And I like how they also try to tier that down, so it kind of looks like it's a normal glide path exit or something. We all know what that's about.
Yep. He gets off the board, just real quick, only days before Joey announces. Joey announces April 25th, 2019. We think he gets off the board the first week of April. So right like clockwork. Somebody's like, dude, this is a distraction. You've got to get off this board.
Yep. And they're just cleaning up the loose ends at the time. So They take us over to the Romanian contract. So they tell us now in the fall of 2015, Hunter, he entered into an oral agreement with a business associate one. And Rob Walker? Perfect. Thank you for that. So business associate one is Rob Walker. Hunter enters into a deal with Rob Walker purportedly to help a Romanian business person, initials
Popoviciu,
GP, to contest bribery charges that he was facing in his home country. So that's Romania. And Rob Walker, who was he?
Former Clinton staffer. His wife, Betsy, was the personal aide to Dr. Jill Biden. Jill is a doctor unless you have a stroke, that is, and then you have to find an MD. But longtime crony, traveled Latin America with Bill Clinton, based out of Little Rock, total grifter, part-time owner of Metabiota. Can you believe it? So yeah, this is somebody who got convicted on bribery charges for giving preferential treatment to a Romanian lawmaker to get a good deal on commercial real estate in downtown Bucharest. So these are people that Robert and I, interface with all the time.
And this is somebody, so Rob Walker, then he has kind of a reputation for helping people with these types of problems.
In his own words, he's the stand-in for Hunter. Rob Walker is there to create layers between the ultimate payer and the ultimate beneficiary. So a lot of the cash goes to Rob to make it harder for investigators, and it'd be hard if this crackhead didn't leave his laptop, for us to follow the money. So if it goes to Rob, that's another link in the chain that somebody has to connect.
Amazing. Okay, so he's kind of this liaison guy. They obviously bring in Hunter because of the name. Fall of 2015, so Joe's still in office. And we have, it reminds me of what we're hearing about with Menendez, honestly. Menendez was doing a lot of this type of get somebody off, although he was calling U.S. attorneys in the United States, but it's the same type of pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, now he is trying to help GP, this Romanian business person, contest these bribery charges, and he was facing them in Romania. So GP, he paid an entity associated with Rob Walker through his Romanian business. Now, between November 2015 and May 2017, Rob Walker's entity then received approximately $3.1 million. Nice chunk of money from Romania, I would imagine.
Yes.
It was split roughly into thirds between Hunter, Rob Walker, and business associate 2.
So we believe that this is James Gillier.
Okay.
The English-born bald guy who in May of 2017 proposed an equity distribution whereby 10% was going to be held by H for the big guy.
Okay, that was him.
Yes. His daughter has deleted all of her social media as a result of Marco Polo.
Well, that's...
Didn't even talk about his daughter, although she did work for Hillary Clinton. So, yeah, James Gillier.
Curious. Okay, so we got the whole little entourage together. They're trying to work these deals out. That was just in Romania. Then they say under subsection 3, now we're going to jump over to China. CEFC, the China Energy Company. They tell us in late fall, also of 2015, Hunter, business associate 1, Rob Walker, and 2, which is Gilliar, same people, they begin to investigate potential infrastructure project with individuals associated with CEFC, which is a Chinese energy conglomerate. In or around December of that year, Hunter then met in Washington, D.C. So it's the fall to the December, then the individual and with individuals associated with CEFC. During the next 2 years, Hunter, Rob Walker, and Gilliar, presumably, continued to meet with the individuals associated with CEFC, including in February 2017 with the then chairman, hereinafter called chairman. And is that...
Ye Jianming hasn't been seen since March of 2018. The February 2017 meeting they allude to was in Miami, wherein Ye Jianming gave Hunter Biden an $80,000 diamond.
That's right, the diamond. Okay, so he's meeting with them, and this is taking place in Washington now.
That meeting occurred in Miami in February, but the December 15 is in D.C., February 17 is in Miami. They have like a yacht show down there, and it's an excuse for everybody to get together.
Amazing. So then we fast forward, we're in March 1st, 2017, State Energy HK, which is a Hong Kong entity that's also associated with the Chinese CEFC. They paid $3 million to Rob Walker's entity for sourcing deals and for identifying other potential ventures. A Hong Kong company that's connected with CEFC dumps another $3 million in. Hunter had an oral agreement with Rob Walker to receive 1/3 of those. So he's got $1 million coming his way from that deal. The defendant, Hunter, in turn then directed a portion of those $1 million to go back over to what we think to be Gilliar.
No.
Oh, that's someone else. That's 3.
Yeah, Gilliar, business associate 2. We believe a business associate 3 is Jimmy Biden, Joey's brother.
Ooh, okay. So, thanks for the catch.
It's absolutely nuts.
Thanks for the catch on that. So the family gets that, business associate 3. And now you can really see why they don't want to put the names of these people in these indictments, because that could get a little bit problematic.
We provide the clarity that pisses off all the right people. If we're not pissing off people daily, our finger is not in the open wound enough.
You got it, my friend. And this is so good. So we're just adding some notes to this, and we'll save these red lines if you want to download these later.
Please.
We'll just add the notes to them. And so here it says they continue. So now James Biden is getting a portion of Hunter Biden's deal. So he takes a cut and he passes up off a cut to James, the president's bro. After the state HK payment, Hunter, we've got Walker and then Gilliar. Then they begin negotiating a joint venture with individuals also associated with CEFC. They called this new entity Sino-Hawk. S-I-N-O, Hawk.
Yep, I know the backstory from Tony Bobulinski about that. Sino obviously dealing with the Orient, the Chinese, and then Hawk was Beau Biden's favorite animal. So they named it after their dead brother's favorite animal, the hawk. I know it's warped, but that's the truth.
Nice. And then they're going to maneuver funds all over the place through it. That's nice.
Over their dead brother.
Over the dead brother. Nice, bro. So over the summer then of 2017, Hunter cut out his Sino-Hawk business partners and separately negotiated a venture with individuals then associated with CEFC called Hudson West 3. So then he screws those people out of the deal and then works with someone else. On or
because
about
Bobulinski, this is where Bobulinski comes into play.
Okay.
And Bobulinski can be a hard ass, pardon my French, but
yeah.
Hunter and him butted heads. And Hunter's like, I hold the ultimate hand here. He said this in WhatsApp messages. And that ultimate hand is Biden. So he's like, dude, he didn't tell Bobulinski this at the time, but he cut him out because he didn't want to deal with him. He didn't want scrutiny. He wanted to use that as his own piggy bank. And Bobulinski, although Bobulinski wanted to get in bed with the Chicoms, he at least wanted to build some bridges, some infrastructure projects, and Hunter just wanted the cash.
Yeah, and for those those who recognize that name, Bob Ulinski, we talked about him way before in the 2020 election. He was the guy who kind of popped up there, I think in October, right? And he was revealing a lot of this. It was this simultaneous to the release of the Hunter laptop that the New York Post talked about. I mean, he got censored. Everybody just kind of ignored this whole thing until they could just squeeze Biden through.
So disgusting.
Continuing, they say on or about August 2nd, 2017, Hunter executed on behalf of his company called Owasco the operating agreement for Hudson West 3. HW3 was funded with an initial $5 million of capital from an entity that was not owned or controlled by Hunter. The contract further named Hunter as, quote, the manager of Hudson West and specified that he would receive, quote, compensation of $100,000 per month, and a one-time retainer fee of $500,000. Owasco paid no capital contribution for its ownership share of Hudson West 3. Was this the transaction we covered previously here? One of the emails, there was an email that I think the Oversight Committee just released recently about, I think $5 million that landed in some account. And they said there was a banker who was reading through it and he said, this is kind of a strange transaction.
One of Marco Polo's contributions is that we've identified the bank that sent that email. It's Cathay Bank, Cathay, headquartered in Los Angeles. They were founded right when the Chinese started immigrating en masse to Los Angeles. And quite frankly, they've been the most forthcoming of all the American banks. And this, again, you'll recall, took place 2 days after the WhatsApp shakedown with Hunter and Joey at Joey's house, where Hunter is WhatsApping Raymond Zhao and said, I am sitting here with my father. If the chairman doesn't follow, he said, I will assure you that between who I know and who the man sitting next to me knows, you will come to reneging. So this is 2 days after. So you got Joey involved in the shakedown. He knew what was going on. He lies so effortlessly that people start to believe him. But Joey's involved in the shakedown. Days later, the $5 million comes in.
And then the money just gets...
Yep, and guess what? At this same time, Robert, and this is not in the indictment, although it should be related in a separate indictment, right after that payment comes through, Joey pays cash for the Rehoboth Beach house. So just keep those two things in mind. I don't have enough yet. I rely on paper, so I don't have enough yet, but the timing fits. Joey pays cash for the Rehoboth Beach house, $2 million.
So they form this new entity, Hudson West 3. They get funded. There's capital contribution. Someone drops $5 million in there, and nobody really knows. Ye Jinming. Okay, so that's Ye.
Yes.
So then Hunter gets these nice terms. He's making $100,000 a month. That's more than Ukraine, than Burisma, and he also gets $500,000 to start. Now, shortly after the execution of the contract, on or about August 8th, 2017, Hudson West then transferred approximately $400,000 to Hunter's company called Owasco. Then, thereafter, Owasco received monthly transfers of approximately $165,000. In total, Hudson West made 7 transfers to Hunter's company Owasco in 2017, totaling $1.445 million. Hunter then transferred $555,000 of those funds from Owasco from their Wells Fargo account to Business Associate 3, which was Jimmy Biden, the
president's lookalike and younger brother Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy, as they know him, the fixer.
Amazing. So he gets $500,000. Then in 2018...
For nothing. They had one aborted deal down in Louisiana involving a piece of land where they're going to build an LNG terminal for the Chi-Com's benefit called Monkey Island. Other than that, they did nothing.
And that's the end of the line, really, for that money, right? I mean, that's not another business that they're sending it to. That's like James Biden. That's his spending money. That's the job well done. They say in 2018, Hudson West 3 made another 15 transfers to Owasco. That was $2.1 million. And then Hunter transferred approximately $844,000 of those funds back over to James Biden as well. Man. So we're now over $1 million here just from those couple transfers. We jump into a next section. Now, this word is Skinnyatallis.
Skinnyatallis. I botched it for a year. Don't feel bad at all. Both Owasco and Skinnyatallis are two of the Finger Lakes. Everybody knows Hunter's tiger claw-like tattoo on his back. Those are the Finger Lakes in upstate New York where his deceased mother, Nelia, is from. So he names his shell companies after the Finger Lakes.
Okay, so
Skinnyatallis. So you know the atlas that your mom or your grandma has in her glove box. Think of the word like skinny, Skinnny, Skinnyatallis.
Skinnyatallis. I'll try it. All right. So section 4 is Skinnyatallis. Says on or about September 21st, 2017, Hunter then received a transfer of another $666,000, so 2/3 of $1 million, from Skinnyatallis, which was a partnership owned by 75% by Hunter and another 25% by Business Associate 4.
Eric Schwerin.
And we've seen him a lot. Wasn't his background was kind of the manager for the Biden family?
He was the organizer. Eric Schwerin was a University of Pennsylvania educated, high-paid babysitter. He was to set up all of the corporate documents, set up the meetings, make sure Hunter went to his AAA meetings. He was a high-paid babysitter for the Biden family. Eric Schwerin, the personal financial advisor and consultant to the U.S. Vice President at the time, shared bank accounts with both Hunter and Joe Biden, paid bills for Joe Biden from their shared bank account, which was capitalized in part by foreign oligarchs.
And that's interesting. He would presumably know Hunter quite well and be familiar with his proclivities. And it's interesting that he would want to form a company with him with, an ownership share of that.
His dad is in bed with the Chi-Coms, been to China since the turn of the century. Eric Schwerin, though, doesn't have the vices Hunter has. He's a very sober person. All of his emails are impeccably written, but he's corrupt, and he knew what was happening, but he's made out to be a scapegoat in the indictment. Eric Schwerin should be pleased with this indictment because it looks at him as if he's just looking out for his friend, and his friend was the wayward one, where Schwerin's hands aren't clean either. They're all in bed with each other.
Yeah, so Hunter and Schwerin, they had a variety of business meetings, business interests, and investments. So then we have another entity, and this is Global.
Eudora Global is the name of it, named after the ship that Cecil Rhodes rode on. Eudora, E-U-D-O-R-A.
Eudora Global was a venture capital firm founded and operated by a, quote, trial attorney.
Jeff Cooper.
That's interesting they put that in quotes.
I know. Jeff, because he's really a plaintiff's attorney. He got a lot of money from the asbestos litigation gravy train, and he befriended Beau Biden in Delaware because Joey was blocking asbestos litigation reform in the Senate. He lives 40 minutes away from me in Illinois, in Edwardsville, Illinois. Jeff Cooper.
Okay, so Cooper, the so-called trial attorney, he is operating this new venture called Eudora Global. Then Hunter and Schwerin, they received equity in that entity called Global in exchange for introducing this trial attorney to their contacts in China and India. Then on or about March 21st, 2019, Hunter then gets a distribution of about $619,000 from Global via Skinny Atlas.
Perfect.
Now, financial support from the personal friend, and presumably this is the Kevin Morris character you told us about.
This is Kevin Morris.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. I'll tell you when I have doubts, because I do have doubts on some identities in this, but so far it's rock solid to the point where I bet my life on it. So Kevin Morris is this one.
So from January through October 15, 2020, an entertainment lawyer, hereinafter called a personal friend, provided the defendant, Hunter, with substantial financial support, including approximately $200,000 to rent a lavish house on a canal in Venice, California, $11,000 in payments for his Porsche, and other individual items. In total, Hunter had his personal friend Morris pay over $1.2 million to third parties for Hunter's benefits over the months of January through October 2020. Man, that is a heck of a personal friend, man.
Personal friend he met at a campaign event for his daddy.
Amazing.
In fall of 2019. It's disgusting.
Amazing. So we have the next section talks about Beautiful Things, which was Hunter's memoir. They tell us in 2019, Hunter began writing a nonfiction memoir where he described his substance abuse and his addiction issues that was ultimately titled Beautiful Things. On November 25th, 2019, Hunter then signed a contract with a publishing house. From January through October 2020, Hunter also received approximately $140,000 paid into his wife's bank account that was related to the book.
Melissa Cohen.
And that's curious why it would be into her account.
I know, and why they would name that in the indictment.
Yeah, that is interesting why that is a little fact and tidbit they included there, saying, maybe we know what else is in the bank account, right? Is kind of where I would go with that. Now, they say Hunter had a legal obligation to file and pay his taxes. And so a lot of this, I think, is kind of boilerplate stuff. We'll just hit the highlights, but it says the U.S. income tax system imposes on individuals the need to pay tax. We all know that, unfortunately. The U.S. system allows reduction of taxable income for both businesses and non-businesses. You have to do self-assessments. That means taxpayers must tell the government what they think they owe. The system is also pay-as-you-go, meaning that taxes must either be withheld from wages or paid over the year, and you got to come up with an estimate and so on. The U.S. system relies on the honesty and the integrity of individual taxpayers, which was asking a lot in this case. And while the IRS, while it audits some things, it can only do that to a tiny fraction of people. We know taxes are due on April 15th. You got to make a due date. You can postpone those to October and get extensions and so on. you got to file a Form 1040 and you got to tell us what's in there. If you have a Form 1120, it works this way. And they say here in conclusion, okay, we all know all that. They tell us that here, Owasco, of which Hunter was the 100% owner, was a C corporation that had to file a U.S. corporate income tax return, the Form 1120, and had to pay taxes. And Hunter had a legal obligation to pay his taxes on all his income, including income earned in Ukraine and from his service on Burisma's board, fees generated by deal making with the Chinese private equity fund, as well as income derived from his work as a lawyer and other sources.
That Chinese private equity fund has not been named yet in this program. It's BHR.
BHR. And is that Bohai something?
Harvest Rosemont. That's the full name.
That's right.
Bohai Harvest Rosemont. And tons of information about that. We could go into a new show on that. But Kevin Morris now owns that 10% share. He gave it to his sugar brother. So it's only wrong to ask, if Kevin Morris is giving him liquid cash now, Hunter gave him the 10% share for undervaluation.
Yeah, we know other people who've been prosecuted for allegedly doing that around the country as well.
Yes.
So next section is telling us, so we know Hunter's got all these, a lot of different entities, money's being transacted around. We got James Biden's in the list. We got Eric Sherwin. We got Rob Walker, a bunch of different people named here. And they tell us that now that Hunter owed substantial individual income taxes in the years. We got 16, 17, 18, and 19. They tell us the following is a summary of the self-assessed taxes that Hunter reported that he owed and that he failed to timely pay. So it's not even the government saying that you owe this. It's Hunter acknowledging, I owe you this and I'm not paying it, or I have not paid it. So you see here are the numbers. Gross total income, we'll just hit the highlights. Self-assessed tax due at the time of filing. So in 2016, he said I owed $45K. 17, he said he owed $581K. In 18, that went up to $620,000. And then in 2019, he owed $197,000. So that's a nice chunk of taxes. Now they say that Hunter knew that he had to file and pay these taxes. And because of his varied income streams and to facilitate the withholding of the payments and the taxes due to the IRS, Hunter formed Owasco, which was a C corporation, in about 2006.
Swearing as the registered agent.
Okay, so ES was there. And
he's the babysitter.
Right.
He comes in and says, they don't say this, but basically the situation is, we have an F-up son who needs to bring in some cash because he's a bag man. You play the role of businessman in this. Set up the companies, do whatever. That's Eric Schwerin.
Now they say that Owasco, the PC, the corporation's role, the sole purpose was to ensure that there was sufficient holdings from all the streams of Hunter's income to pay his taxes. Like they created this for that reason. Now, instead of receiving income directly into his personal bank account, that Hunter then directed the third parties to pay Owasco, which had its own bank account and any income owed to him. Owasco then used a payroll service to pay Hunter a salary out of the income that went there, and the payroll service made tax withholdings on behalf of Hunter, which it paid to the IRS, and then Hunter also made quarterly payments and payments with extensions to the IRS, all in anticipation of when Hunter filed his individual tax return. So he's kind of maneuvering things around, delaying stuff, and making quarterly payments. Some payments are being made, it sounds like.
And that payroll service, just for specificity's sake, is ADP. It's the most common one. ADP, based out of New Jersey.
Okay, and so they're trying to comply with the rules. It's a big entity. They're, probably not doing anything fancy for him. He's just diverting funds away from them. Now, because Hunter's income varied from year to year, Hunter, in consultation with his Washington, D.C. based accountant, after called a D.C. accountant.
That firm is called Morgan Wingate.
Okay. And then business associate 4, which was Biden, right? James Biden, periodically adjusted his tax withholdings to ensure that he did not generate additional tax liabilities. And okay, so they're saying he consulted with the accountant, and then he's also emailing the brother, like James Biden, right? He's saying, hey, what does this count as? How do I adjust this?
Jimmy should be indicted.
In a conspiracy with him to evade taxes, as you can see. And they know that. Like, yeah, that's his name right there.
Him.
Amazing. So they've got those emails, and that's the president's bro and the president's son. All right. So Hunter and the president's bro, James, also created a standalone bank account that they referred to as a tax account. Set up a tax account somewhere so you can't touch it, all right? Just put your money in there.
They literally have the impulse control of a golden retriever dog. Golden retriever dog. You have an impulse control of a golden retriever.
Yeah, so they're just trying to skim off. They read the book like Profit First or something. You pay yourself first. Or they went to like a Dave Ramsey seminar or something, and they cut the credit card up or the debit card on that account. So put all your money there. He says, okay, Hunter is going to deposit all of his funds to pay taxes on anything he owed beyond the withholding. So the company will withhold a specific amount, and then they'll have some funds to actually pay this stuff. Now, the arrangement agreement meant that Hunter had to file an individual income tax return. And on IRS Form 1040, where he reported the income he earned from Owasco and other sources, and so that he could pay taxes on that income using the withholdings that Owasco had made and funds from that other separate tax account that they just established. Hunter also had to file a separate corporate income tax return for Owasco on Form 1120, and then he could pay taxes that it owed from Owasco's bank account. Now, this structure generally functioned effectively until 2017, when Hunter, as detailed below, subverted it.
One addendum to that really quickly. It's material, but it's going to come up at the later indictment, or later on in the indictment. That is technically true. This structure, if we're talking about Owasco PC, but remember, Hunter in 2014 set up Rosemont Seneca Bohai with a heretofore unnamed business associate named Devin Archer to collect the Burisma fees. The Burisma fees should have went to Owasco PC, but they went to Rosemont Seneca Bohai. So I don't agree with number 30 in total. He'd been subverting it since 2014. And that is why letting the statute of limitations run out is so damn unjust. It's still 2014, but I digress.
Yeah, and then they could have charged him going back further or charged him earlier. I mean, all this is now coming out here in 2023. Okay, so we see that there was some functionality here. You know, they kind of were kicking around taxes. Somebody at least had a conversation about taxes. They set up another account. Irrespective, though, they subverted it. So then irrespective of the Owasco PC structure and his standalone, they put this one in quotes, quote, tax account, like, okay, like it's your whatever, like, nice job, bro. We know what it is. Hunter knew that he had to file individual and corporate income tax returns and pay taxes on the income that he earned in 2016, 17, 18, and 19. He had done so for tax years 14 and 15, preceding the scheme to not pay the taxes.
That is the first sentence that I can say with confidence. Now, your viewers can disagree or agree that that is materially wrong. And what do I base my statement off of? The IRS guys who investigated the case. The IRS whistleblower statements do not agree with this sentence at all. And I sent it to their attorney. Said this is not what Joe Ziegler said or Gary Shapley said at all. I would bracket that sentence.
So you're saying that he did not pay taxes for the years 14 and 15?
He didn't pay all of them. Joseph Ziegler to this day contends there's about $250,000 of Burisma income that he never paid taxes on. And that's why he's so mad that he thinks Weiss and Leslie Wolf let the statute of limitations run. The IRS can still civilly go after him, and they should. They can't criminally, though.
Interesting. Okay, good details there. So they tell us that Hunter then timely filed, after requesting an extension, his 2014 individual tax return on a Form 1040 on October 9, 2015. They say that Hunter reported owing $239,000 in taxes, and having already paid $246,000 to the IRS, he claimed he was entitled to a refund of just under $8,000. Hunter did not report his income from Burisma on his 2014 Form 1040. So all the money that Hunter received from Burisma in 2014 went to a company hereinafter called ABC.
Rosemont Seneca Bohai.
Okay, so that's different than...
So call it, it's really RSB. That's what they called it. RSB, LLC. Domiciled in Delaware. The address was Devin Archer in New York City.
And that's different than the other one, BHR, right? So we have these different initials that are often a lot of the same initials. Soup. Yeah. So, okay, so it's Rosemont Seneca Bohai, and they're calling it ABC. So it was then deposited into its bank account. So RSB and its bank account were then owned and controlled by a business partner of Hunter, Business Associate 5.
Devin Archer.
Devin Archer.
1,000% certain on that.
That's Devin Archer.
This is the next sentence.
And Devin Archer's the guy who we saw testify in front of, I think, Oversight and, had an interview with Tucker and a bunch of things.
Yeah. Pathetic limited hangouts, but yes.
Devin Archer was also a member of Burisma's board of director. And so there you go. That's Hunter's bro, right? I mean, they were kind of palling around a lot of the time. Hunter then received transfers of funds from RSB, the bank account, and funds from the RSB bank account were then used to make investments on Hunter's behalf.
Sorry. A couple of the investments are in our dossier. One was a failed tech fund in Hawaii called M Bloom, run by Joey's Commerce Department Deputy Secretary named Donald Graves, then run by Don Graves, Graves. And look up M Bloom, MBLOOM, and it totally blew up, and the U.S. taxpayer blew like $145,000 on this pet project that Hunter was involved with Burisma cash. M Bloom.
Perfect. Okay, so he's making these boneheaded investments clients on Hunter's behalf. Now, because he owned ABC, a part of RSB, Devin Archer paid taxes on income that he and Hunter received from Burisma. Now, starting in November, Hunter then directed his Burisma board fees to an Owasco PC bank account that he controlled. So Devin is kind of covering for Hunter in a way, like paying taxes on his behalf. And Hunter apparently doesn't want that. He takes that money away from Burisma, puts it back into his bank account so that he can have full control of it.
What are you doing following the law, man? This is like my freaking piggy bank. Remember what Joey says? Nobody F's with a Biden.
That's
Nobody.
right. Yeah, and we've seen emails from Hunter to Devin, and I think, Hunter treated Devin, like a groupie kind of in many emails. It felt like he was, even when Devin was, I think, under some pressure, right? He was talking and exchanging text messages with Hunter, and Hunter's just like, deal with it. You got to kind of fall on the sword for this. Like,
Hunter
this is
was patronizing, but it's ironic because Devin was much more handsome and charismatic. But Hunter knew that Devin was around to do the work, but Devin would have never got those opportunities had it not been for the Biden surname. So that's why I think the interviews with Tucker are only half-assed.
It felt to me like Hunter was kind of exploiting him, and he kind of just wanted to be in a little bit of his aura to some degree, and so it's kind of a weird position.
Devin was a willing whore in the FARA-violating scheme.
Right. Okay, so Hunter then, they say he timely filed, after requesting an extension, his 2015 individual tax return on Form 1040, did that in 2016, and Hunter at that time reported owing $820,000 in taxes, withholding $644,000, saying he owed the IRS $176,000. Now, for 2015, he declared income he received. He did declare the Burisma income on the form that year. From at least 2017 through April 2017, so a couple months in that year, Business Associate 4, which remind me was James Biden, and Jimmy, and Personal Assistant 1, they provided Hunter with periodic updates of his cash flow and his outstanding liabilities, including various income tax liabilities.
So this is Joanne Mayer. Joanne, M-A-Y-E-R.
Okay.
Like John, Joanne Mayer.
She is Personal Assistant 1, and so she's presumably working for Hunter, for the family, for James?
For Hunter. She's another babysitter like Eric. I mean, this is an F-up, right? He's on crack. So he needs handlers to get to work on time and make sure Maisie's soccer games are attended haphazardly, things like that.
So they're sending him emails from April 2017 to September 2017. Personal Assistant 1, which is Mayer, she sent Hunter a, quote, weekly bill update saying, hey, you've got IRS liabilities, you've got other outstanding bills. Hunter controlled his finances, and he directed James and Personal Assistant 1 to pay certain bills and not others. Said, pay this, don't pay that. Hunter routinely chose to pay personal expenses and not pay his taxes. Now, further, beginning in or around May of 2017, Hunter began to make periodic $10,000 payments to the IRS to address his 2015 individual income tax liability. And between May 2017, March 2018, he made 7 payments totaling $70,000, but made no further payments after March 2018. At that time, he still owed for the year 2015 $106,000. So then Hunter used the services of a DC accountant from January 1 until he died, the accountant, in June 2019.
Bill Morgan of Morgan Wingate.
All right, so we got Bill, and so Bill is no longer...
Oh, you know what? We made a mistake. We didn't make a mistake in identification. We made a mistake in labeling. Jimmy is Business Associate 3 and Schwerin is 4, right?
Okay.
So Jimmy's 3, Schwerin's 4. It changes nothing material other than labeling. We got the right people.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind as we carry on. We say here in 2019, November, Hunter then engaged the services of an accounting firm in Los Angeles and California. It sounds like he's trying to find some professionals maybe to fix some of this stuff up.
Edward White Company.
Okay.
Edward White is the name of the accounting practice.
Okay, we'll mark that there. Then subsection E, they carry on. This is the government. They tell us that rather than pay his taxes, Hunter then spent millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle, saying Hunter spent millions on extravagant lifestyle at the same time that he chose not to pay his taxes. Hunter spent approximately $1 million in 2016, $1.4 million in 2017, $1.8 million in 2018, and then only $600,000 in 2019. So he was on a pretty upward trajectory there, and then that got cut down by 60%. That's in 2019. From January through October 15, 2020, Hunter received more than $1.2 million in financial support that was used to pay various personal expenses, but not any of his federal income tax liabilities. That was for the years 2016 to 2019. Now, between 2016 and 2020, Hunter spent his money, here's the government writing, on drugs, escorts, girlfriends, luxury hotels, rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes.
In our dossier, 3 sections: business-related crimes, sex-related crimes, drug-related crimes. And you can follow along, as he mentioned, just a reminder, for free at BidenReport.com. Here's the Mac Daddy. This page 13 is the first time in a couple of years I've been proud of the feds. This took months of work.
Let's get into it. Paragraph 38 says the following is a summary of the approximate expenditures that the defendant made instead of paying his taxes, right? And hand caught in the cookie jar on that one. So summary of the approximate expenses made from Owasco PC and the defendant's bank accounts. Garrett, you want to walk us through some of the highlights, maybe anything you had zoomed in on?
Yes. So number one, Hunter retained Edward White and Company in part because unlike us, I have a personal checking account, Marco Polo does. When Marco Polo's board goes through our bank statements, we, like most mere mortals, not a princeling, not a Biden, people do F with us. We classify each line item as subscriptions, household, right? You classify expenses in your online banking software. Hunter's a princeling. He doesn't do that. So they hired Edward White to go through all of these different bank accounts, classify expenses, and then put them in these categories. What I will say about the very first row, ATM cash withdrawal, the breakup of these affects ones down the line in terms of classification, meaning a lot of times he paid for crack with cash for obvious reasons. Maybe the crack dealer doesn't have a bank account or he's unbanked. Maybe he doesn't want it traced. So these cash withdrawals are not normal. You do not see, for example, in 2018, he got $772,000 in cash out of ATMs. In our dossier, we go through how Hunter had a arrangement with hookers whereby he would send them a code, and Wells Fargo had this feature whereby the women didn't have to have his debit card to withdraw cash from the ATM. He'd send him a code. The hooker would grab the $800 with his code and then come to his room. This is all laid out in the text messages. So first row, ATM cash withdrawal. Many vices are capitalized through this. The crack, the women, the smoking accessories. The next one is payments of various women. This is government boring speak for pimps, hookers, other things. And again, just as we go through this, Robert, I just want to let everybody know this is not somebody who is lauded as a black sheep of the family. The U.S. president said this is the smartest man he knows from a pure intellectual capacity. So this man spent like this, and from an intellectual capacity, smartest man the Western world's leader knows.
And flying around with him to all these events, staying at the White House. We saw, back when Joe was VP, he was taking him around to China and different places like that. So it's very curious.
Yes, and what is material, and what I probably should have started off with, is not just that he made these expenses from his business bank account. It's that he tried to write off some of these as legitimate business expenses. So to Hunter Biden, paying a Russian prostitute for sex is a business expense. That's just something to keep him going in the nihilism of life. That is obviously sarcastic. But
right.
Here we have clothing and accessories, $397,000 over a 4-year period.
Let's hit the total numbers on that. So like over various women was 4,400 in 2016, went up to 138,000 in 2017. 2018 was up to 383,000. 2019 back down to 156,000, and the total is $683,000, right, over the 4 years. So six figures basically per year.
2020 is about $35,000. So the Bidens are not like you and me; they're special, as Great Gatsby would say.
Right.
Clothing and accessories, 78.5 in 2016, 113, 151, 53. We have multiple receipts in our dossier and on the laptop, spending $6,500 on a sport coat at an Italian luxury wear. And again, he's not making these fees legitimately. I said this on War Room earlier this morning. This indictment deals with what happened to the money once it got in the pot, right? It'd be one thing if Hunter was a legitimate businessman and the pot was filled with cash through through legal means and
Right.
then spent like this. No, this cash was coming from Chi-Com operatives, and it was being spent on hookers and blow and clothes.
Right. And Joe Biden, right, and the Biden family, they have to be aware of some of these behaviors. They have to understand where the money is coming from, right? And it feels to me like Joe Biden is enabling that, right? It's exploiting it. He has to know that it's happening, or...
Exactly. Ben Shapiro says a lot of dumb things. Probably the dumbest in 2022. He said that from all available evidence, Joe Biden seems to be a very good father. That's what Ben Shapiro said. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Joey knows his son is an F-up. He knows he's an addict, and yet he wants him for the cash. Hunter was the bagman for over a decade. So Joey is the type of father to put his addict son in situations with loose women, foreign cash, and no oversight.
Right.
What could go wrong?
So we have a lot of numbers here: food and groceries, adult entertainment. Let's see what that one was looking like. So, wow. Okay. So yeah, $4,000 was where that started. And then it went up to 56,000, then up to 100 grand, and then back down to 27,000. So that totaled about 188,000 over the 4 years, which was, I think, yeah, that was more expensive than his legal fees. So
strip. We're talking, to give some clarity or granularity rather, adult entertainment is strip clubs, sex cam websites, pornography sites. Remember, the US president still has an active Pornhub account, and he uploaded videos of himself to his Pornhub account. That's why this lawsuit they have against us is so stupid. Hunter lost any copyright or anything else when he uploaded his own porn videos to public Pornhub channels. RHB East is his username. RHB East.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, I didn't realize it was still active.
Still active. Now,
I
he
didn't
locked
really
it down a little bit.
Yeah.
He locked it down circa October 2020, but the content is still up there. And some people have actually, before he locked it down, some hilarious users, and we have this in our report, commented on several of his videos. Smartest man the U.S. president knows. Joey said he's done nothing wrong.
Amazing. Okay, well, Joe, it's going to be curious to see what Joe says about all this. And,
He's in Malibu right now. Joey is at a fundraiser in a couple of hours in his son's hometown. So I wonder if Hunter's going to be there. And
that's curious.
Our long-smoking bankroller, Kevin Morris.
So Joe just happens to be flying out into California, where this same indictment just dropped from his U.S. attorneys out there. Interesting. Okay, so we've got advisors, home improvement, childcare, healthcare, all this stuff, right? So they're saying all said and done, grand total of this, $4.9 million. All that money went out. None of it went to the government, right? There's no line item of the government that is here getting paid their tax money. So that's a chunk of fees. Was there anything else that was worth zooming in on?
Well, I just want to reiterate that a large portion of these were expensed. So, for example, he had a business. And he said that was a business expense. Again, normal humans don't act like that. This isn't the case of an addict who was just doing degenerate things. Hunter was on the board of Burisma for the entirety of the conduct named in this, except the final 6 months of 2019. Think about that. He was a Ukrainian energy executive while he spent about $165,000 at strip clubs.
And there was that one story, I think, didn't he try to expense, I think, a $75,000, something like that, sex club?
He spent $10,000 entry fee to a sex club he got kicked out of for grabbing a woman's behind. And on the wire transfer, it said golf membership.
Nice.
$10,000 to a sex club. The U.S. president's son got kicked out of a sex club.
Couldn't even pass muster there. All right, so they carry on and they tell us that in addition to all that, right, we've got now huge gobs of money that are going to not taxes, that are problematic funds. They tell us that Hunter also then late filed his taxes when he was facing contempt charges. So he's kind of delaying this stuff, right? He's taking money out of his bank accounts, diverting funds, bypassing withholding and all the things. They tell us that suddenly in 2019 and early 2020, Hunter became embroiled in 2 civil lawsuits. Now, as part of the lawsuits, he had to produce financial records, including his tax returns, and these lawsuits forced him to ultimately file the returns for 17 and 18. Beginning in May 2019, Person 1 brought a paternity and a child support action in Arkansas State Court against Hunter.
London Roberts, and I was an expert witness for her and her attorneys.
London Roberts, that's right. And Garrett Ziegler, you were in court there in Arkansas.
Yes, with Hunter Biden.
With Hunter. Wild. I'm sure that was a fun scene. Now, in June 2019, he says the defendant's ex-wife brought a motion. Hunter's Hunter's ex-wife brought a motion to enforce a marital separation agreement between herself and Hunter in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia because Hunter had stopped making spousal support payments and refused to provide financial records, including his tax returns that were necessary to calculate the amount of spousal support that he owed per his agreement with his ex-wife.
Kathleen Buell, Buhle, hailing from Chicago.
And he's married now to Cohen?
Melissa Cohen, yes. And Kathleen and him was a shotgun marriage because she got pregnant with Naomi, and Kathleen got married 5 months pregnant with Hunter in Chicago. And at one point in time, the initial spousal support was $37,000 a month. That was supposed to go to Kathleen, $37,000 a month.
And then he stopped making those payments. So then she files in DC. In 2019, Hunter then continually stonewalled the production of the financial records through which person one, which was Roberts, right?
Yes, London Roberts.
And Hunter's ex-wife, and the court sought to ascertain the financial situation and the ability to pay. So zooming at Hunter's now, he's got these two civil suits, one from ex-wife, one from baby mama, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now Hunter then, the demands for Hunter's tax returns steadily increased, escalating then to November 2019. That month, Hunter then hired California accountants to prepare his late and his unfiled individual income tax returns and Owasco's corporate return for the 2017 and the 2018 years.
That's the same month he met Kevin Morris.
Same month he meets Kevin Morris. I'm trying to think about the political timeline as well, right? Joe's probably thinking about running around this time.
Joe is running. Joe announced in April of 2019, so he'd been on the trip for 6 months.
Okay.
And Hunter meets Kevin Morris at a fundraiser at Alyssa Milano's house, and the lawsuit from London, the mother of his child, is filed in May of 2019. And so all this is coming to a head, and here cometh the caveman.
Yeah, and so subsequently then, the Arkansas court, where you were, issued an order that Hunter had until January 16, 2020 to produce his individual income tax returns from 17 and 18. In DC, the Superior Court likewise ordered Hunter to produce the same returns by January 17, 2020. Now, Hunter missed both deadlines, prompting counsel in Arkansas and in DC to move for contempt. Now, if Hunter were to be found in contempt, either court could incarcerate him for his failure to comply with the court orders. On January 21st, 2020, Arkansas issued an order that Hunter appear and show cause, why he should not be held in contempt. Now, after Hunter entered into a temporary child support agreement with London, the court continued the hearing on the motion for contempt and gave Hunter until March 1st of 2020 to provide the missing records, including 17 and 18 in the income returns. On or about February 18, 2020, Hunter then late filed his tax form. On the 2017 form, Hunter reported $1.9 million in taxable income and $581,000 in tax due and owing. But Hunter chose not to pay any of his outstanding 2017 tax in February of 2020. Now, that same day, Hunter also late filed his 2018 Form 1040. And on the 2018 Form 1040, the defendant reported $1.68 million in taxable income and $620,000 in taxes due and owing. The defendant, Hunter, again chose not to pay any of his outstanding 2018 tax liability when he late filed his 2018 form. So he's filing and filing and filing and not paying any taxes. Now, on June 12th, Hunter again late filed his 2016 form, reporting $1.2 million and reporting a $45,000 tax liability. Again, Hunter chose not to pay. And so we see numerous years where he is not paying. Hunter then, he had the funds. They say, Hunter, you're good. We're back. We just wrapped up the years. So we just finished the years. We know that he had several different years where he was late paying and he owed money, but he wasn't paying the money that was owed when he was making the filings.
Money comes in, paying for hookers and blow. Top of 16.
Top of 16. It's a lot more fun to pay that stuff for him than it is to pay your taxes. So you can see where his priorities were. So they say that he also had funds in 2017 and 2018, 19, and 20. They say, as described more and below, each year in which he failed to pay his taxes, we know he had sufficient funds available to pay some or all, literally all, of his outstanding taxes when they were due. But Hunter chose not to pay them. Notably, writes the government, in 2020, Hunter, well after he had regained his sobriety in 2020, and when he finally filed his outstanding 16, 17, 18 forms, Hunter did not direct any payments towards his tax liabilities for each of those years. Well, his dad's the president. That was in 2020, but daddy's about to become president. So at the same time, Hunter spent large sums to maintain his lifestyle from January through October. And in that period, he received financial support from a personal friend, that's Kevin Morris, totaling $1.2 million. The financial support included hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments for, among other things, housing, media, relations, accountants, lawyers, and his Porsche. For example, they say Hunter spent $17,500 each month, totaling approximately $200,000 from January through October of 2020, also spent on a lavish house on a canal in Venice Beach, California, and saying thus, Hunter's practice of tax noncompliance in 17 and 18, where the IRS stood as the last creditor to be paid, persisted into the later tax years. And the government doesn't like it when they don't get their money. So that is the chunk of it. And I want to be cognizant of your time. You want to hit some of these counts?
Yes, absolutely. Keep going. I have at least 10, probably 15 more minutes.
Okay, so we'll see what we can get to. We got count one. Now, the grand jury realleges everything that we just said, right? So everything in there is going to be applicable to the rest of what we read as the baseline, the base layer. And they're going to zoom in and charge him with specific offenses. So the grand jury, go ahead.
I don't know if I need to talk about this standing up, but you're the attorney. I am not. So maybe take the audience through. These are Leo Weiss and Derek Hines in front of maybe a dozen citizens of LA County in an open courtroom. There is a judge present, correct?
Yeah.
And they're taking them through evidence probably on a PowerPoint screen. And that's the setting. So, you can indict a ham sandwich. That's always the saying. You can't really.
Right.
But anybody can be indicted for anything if the jury is ridiculous. But all of these things that we're talking about, this is not a normal indictment because of the laptop, right? So I just want to get that across. And have you ever, I can't recall your exact CV. Maybe you have more color on the process of a grand jury and calling one and everything else.
Well, I've never been a prosecutor, so I've never led a grand jury. That's something that the government does. But
of course, but in your discovery process, you've seen probably many grand jury transcripts, right? For the defendants you had.
I have. I've seen transcripts and I've submitted filings to sort of nudge my way into grand jury proceedings. Grand jury proceedings are secretive and they're, really under the dark of night. It's really hard to get stuff. Even here in Arizona, when we would get transcripts and pull the transcripts out, we'd have to turn them back in. It's all very secretive and protective to protect the integrity of the grand jury process. But from the government's perspective, they have a lot of leeway. They've got, the capability to present what they think is going to stick and they can make their decision. The grand jury, it resembles kind of a jury proceeding, like a trial, but a mini trial where the government is presenting and the defense is not there. And so there are some mechanisms, what was interesting in this case, and I still don't know the details on this, there are some mechanisms by which a defense can fight their way into the grand jury, or at least here in Arizona, we had a process where there's a form of a letter that you can submit to the grand jury, basically, pitching your case as to why there's not probable cause here to bring these charges. This is a very preliminary stage of the case. They're not having to prove somebody's guilty here, just that there's enough cause to indict them and go to the next step. And so you might, the other process.
Now, what is the evidentiary standard, perhaps? You can enlighten us. For conviction is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Probable cause, essentially, is where you're at, or just enough to file it. The prosecutor's presenting to the grand jury. It's a probable cause standard. They meet that standard, and it's enough that the charge can move forward. So think about the other parallel way that this works. So people get indicted in two ways, one through a grand jury, one through a direct complaint. A direct complaint is when we've seen these, like an FBI special agent will also write a search warrant and an affidavit, and they'll justify their criminal charges. That's because that officer has done an investigation. They've analyzed the case. They've decided that there is enough cause here to file a direct complaint. And then it goes to
that has to be signed by a judge.
That is sworn off on by, it's a witness. The officer is a witness. The prosecutor is taking that witness as evidence and then swearing it on a complaint. And then the complaint goes in front of the court. When that happens, what we're trying to do is protect a defendant against unreasonable charges without cause. If you can just charge somebody and put them through the process of being indicted or being charged with a crime, there are already penalties associated with a criminal charge, even if you've not been found guilty of anything yet. So we give the defense an opportunity to challenge an indictment or to challenge a direct complaint. And in a direct complaint format, what we would do is actually request a preliminary hearing, and you'd have a trial, like a mini trial, to establish probable cause at that outset. And that would result in bringing witnesses in, right? A preliminary hearing through a direct complaint is where you bring witnesses in, and it's actually like a miniature trial. And we just covered one of these, forget what case it was, but relatively recently. But an indictment bypasses all of that, right? An indictment is the government just taking it to a grand jury, which is done undercover. You can't see that. And then if the grand jury indicts, right, they think there's enough probable cause to bring the charges forward, and then you don't get the right to a preliminary hearing. Now you've been indicted.
Yes. criminals. And this is baked into the Bill of Rights, right? The founders believed that it's going to be harder for more people to be corrupt, right? That's why you have to be convicted by a jury of your peers. To me, this is so beautiful, it makes my hair stand up. Because by nature, my personal disposition, and I know this is going to sound weird to you because this is essentially me being on the prosecutorial side, but by nature, I'm like you. My disposition is protecting defendant rights and don't make the government not harass people and making me a high bar. That's why I'm so mad they raided James O'Keefe's apartment. They did not have probable cause, and they put a secret gag order on Google to make Google not tell them that they were searched. Their emails, that is. So I want everybody to listen to this, that even if you like Hunter Biden personally or hate me personally, we want to be fair to all. And the reason why this is so nuts is because in most indictments in front of a grand jury, we don't have this evidence. So I think that's essential to point out.
I absolutely agree with the presumption of innocence. I think that these safeguards are extremely important. I think due process is very important. And that's why you'll hear on this channel us defending the Trump trials very aggressively, because I feel like many of those were violations of those very same principles. But as you mentioned, what we've been observing in this Hunter case from day one, and it's not just us speculating. You wrote 600 plus pages about it in the book at marcopolousa.org. You can get your copy. And what we saw from the DOJ was, in my opinion, a massive double standard of justice. And maybe you can, opine on this, but there was even some evidence, I think, that maybe came out from the whistleblowers, the IRS whistleblowers, that said that the DOJ was going to try to not charge Hunter at all, not even diversion, like the deal that he was going to get that was botched, but they were going to actually give him a better deal, right, without even presenting any of this to anybody.
Precisely. And that is why Shapley came forward on his own accord. Ziegler and Shapley are both commendable, but they're not equal. Shapley came forward on his own accord. Ziegler responded to a letter from the Congress and then cooperated. But Shapley, if it weren't for Shapley, none of that would have happened. And Ziegler said that. He said that the courage displayed by Shapley inspired him to come forward because he knew this was a sham. So Shapley comes forward and says, hey, look, this is a miscarriage of justice. There's unequal application of the law. If his name were Hunter Smith, he would have been indicted back in 2020. Right. And, and Hunter gets his day in court. Me and you are never going to argue, and this is like duh thing to your normal viewers, but we want Hunter to get his day in court. I want Abby Lowell up there with the PowerPoint looking at the Venmo transactions. I want Abby Lowell to defend a $1,500 artwork payment to a woman named Soldalina Tolentino. I would love Abby Lowell to do that. I'm being a little bit facetious, but if you were a defense attorney, this indictment is nuts. If you were called on to represent this defendant, you'd get sweaty palms because this is not a normal indictment.
It's a tough case. I mean, if I was representing Hunter, I would have done everything in my power to get him to take that plea deal back at the original outset. When we were reading through that transcript here, I was shocked at how derailed the whole thing got. And I was even shocked that his defense attorneys were being as kind of ornery as they were, because I think that if they would have just squeezed this whole thing through, even if there were some questionable errors in the actual structure of the deal, Hunter would have had a much better opportunity to claim immunity from further prosecution. And I think he would have had an argument that all of these charges were invalid and precluded based upon his prior deal.
Precisely. If they just would have said that, let's say they agree to the plea deal and then they indict him again because in the plea deal, the government said, no, this investigation's ongoing. Hunter could always argue that they were later indicting him on something covered, like you said, by that statement of facts. So I think they realize this, and that's why Chris Clark and Latham and Watkins got the boot, and now it's an Abby Lowell show with just their local counsel, Bartholomew Dalton. And get this is new. Hunter's going to have to get local counsel in California for Abby Lowell. Remember, let's see if it's the same guy suing me. Paul Savati, Salvaty, partner at Winston Strawn in LA's office, is the lead counsel for our case because he's local in the Central District. So I'm watching Court Listener every 5 minutes. Derek Hines just made his entry of appearance, but we'll see who the local counsel is on the criminal side for Hunter. It'd probably be somebody at Winston and Strawn, but who knows? And then Abby will do pro hac vice. But I've got to run. This was so fun because you and I are nerds, and I want you to look into our case. We owe a response by Friday, 7 days from now, in the Central District, same district. And guess what? He may be arraigned when I'm out there. I'm heading out to California next week just to be with the attorneys. And I would love for him to be arraigned that day because we're going to get billboard trucks for the second time this year. And we'll have him driving around the courthouse when his ass is brought up there with the Secret Service in tow. And the judge is not a crazy. The judge is a Trump-appointed judge. You know the judge in our case, Robert, gave money to the plaintiff's daddy, gave Joey $2,000 in 2020.
Wow.
And he also was appointed by Joey. So the plaintiff's daddy appointed the judge over our case. And the judge's ex-wife is the current Secretary of Labor appointed by Joe. So you can help us. Everybody can help us out by going to fightbiden.org. Take it off on your taxes before the 31st. It's a C3. Can't be much easier. Fightbiden.org. And I want to come back on your program. I appreciate it.
Garrett, you're an amazing man. You're doing really, really impressive and great work. And
thank you.
We're appreciative of your time.
Thank you. And I know sobriety guides your words and sobriety guides mine. We never want to accuse Hunter of something he doesn't do, but this is all real. It's hair-raising stuff. This is nuts. And Joey was the chairman. You know why I call him that? Because Hunter called him that. He said to Rob Walker, James Gillier, and Tony Bobolinsky that my chairman says it's an emphatic no. So Joey's Hunter's chairman. Everybody should remember that.
And it's all in the family, man. And there's been a collusion to cover this whole thing up and to just sweep it under the rug. But you are doing incredible work to shine the spotlight on it, my friend. And thank you so much for your time today.
It's a group effort. Thank you.
All right, Garrett, my friend. Good luck out there. We'll talk to you later, my friend.
Godspeed.
Be well. Let's go back to the rest of the indictment and wrap it up and see what else we've got here. So we've got count one. As you can see here, the defendant earned a substantial income in 2016, telling us over the course of 2016, he got $1.58 million in gross income. And so we're going to wrap this up. And then we've got a couple clips because we've got reaction from some other people. Hunter actually has a reaction. Biden avoids the question. We've got an oversight statement coming out, and we've got an IRS whistleblower statement coming out. So we'll just wrap up with the indictment and see what else is here before we go into that other stuff, telling us that Hunter had a legal obligation to file the U.S. individual tax return, saying for tax year 2016, anyone under 65 filing jointly, or who made more than this, they had to file by a certain time. And here, he knew. They say he knew he had to pay taxes. So in 2017, Business Associate 4 and Personal Assistant 1, they frequently told Hunter that he owed taxes. Okay, April, Associate 4 forwarded Hunter an email from the accountant. It says, it looks like Owasco is going to owe $52,000, Hunter. It looks like you're going to individually owe $26,000, Hunter. In 2017, the DC accountant also used information, also told Hunter, said you're responsible for signing and mailing your returns. We told you. Here, his assistant also said, or Hunter responded to his assistant and to Business Associate 4. Hunter said, you know, I just saw last week the unmarked envelope. The office requires signatures for my taxes. I wish someone had told me, but it's my fault for thinking of that or for having ignored an email that I'm sure Eon of you sent. There is a large envelope in the office sitting to the door, which requires 50 signatures, including my ex-wife's. So it sounds like a crackhead email to me. Now, Hunter then brought the 2016 form to his ex-wife, asked her to sign it. She said, yeah, I'll sign it. Now, after reviewing the document with her accountant, so she signed it. Then Hunter's ex-wife texted him, said that their unfiled tax returns were in the trunk of your car, but the tax returns were not filed. Then we see that he owes taxes for 2016. Didn't pay those. He told him he owes $26,000 there. Didn't pay him, but he had the funds to do it and chose not to. He spent approximately $187,000 on personal expenses rather than pay the $40,000 that he owed. So he had $187,000, but he couldn't pay the $45,000. So they say we're charging him with a crime for that. That's count one. Count two, over the course of 2017, same thing. He earned a bunch of money, $2.3 million. He did not timely file. He knew he had to pay. People were telling him. Personal Assistant 2 said, you owe a lot of money. Her words, in quotes. You owe a lot of money. So he set up a call between Hunter and the DC accountant, and they prepared his tax returns, and they gave it to him, and they emailed him. They said, Hunter, on October 12th, they sent him an email saying you owe $600,000 and $204,000 in income taxes. But then in October, instead of responding to the accountant, Hunter, he texted his ex-wife back. He said that I can't make my alimony payment to you because the wire came back due to insufficient funds. And you know, tuitions, alimony, taxes, and rent. Jesus is what Hunter said. Alimony, taxes. Okay, they put that in bold. Like he knows that he had to pay his taxes, but he didn't pay it. Hunter had not paid his 2017 taxes when he sent this text. Didn't pay him, but he knew he had to. He also someone emailed him again saying you got to pay your taxes. File your returns as soon as possible. Then the 2017 returns are still unfiled. You need to get 2017 filed so we can try to work out a payment schedule. Now, in December of 2018, Hunter texted his ex-wife. He said, I have no money. I'm waiting on a few things. When I can pay the taxes, I'll pay the taxes. In the meantime, I can't pay her alimony and all the girls' expenses. Then he texted Personal Assistant 2 in November, asked him to send her all the auto pay expenses and the payroll breakdown. She sent him another email. And then his ex-wife texted him, and he told his ex-wife, my tax returns aren't completed. I have no prepared tax returns to send now. He had a duty to pay his $585,000 in taxes, but didn't pay it. And rather than pay his taxes, he spent millions of dollars on extravagant lifestyles. That's count 2. We got count 3. Similarly here, he made $2.3 million, and you get the rest of the pattern here, okay? Count 4, he made $2.8 million, $2.1 million, not paying his taxes, got a bunch of money from Burisma in 2019, $39,000 there, $40,000 here, and he instead spent millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle. He spent more than $1.8 million, including $772,000 in cash withdrawals, $383,000 to payments to women, $151,000 for other things, and we know those numbers as well. And so you see count 5, he received $2.1 million, count 6, he hired accountants, he had extensive business travel that he claimed, but turns out that's not true. He specifically described his stays in his book now, so they're going through his book. They're saying, Hunter talked a lot about his book, by the way. Private rentals, he said, I stayed in one place until I got tired of it. I moved on with my merry band of crooks, creeps, and outcasts. Availability drove some of the moves. Impulsiveness drove others. A sample itinerary, says Hunter in his crack book, says, I left the Chateau Marmont. First time for an Airbnb in Malibu. When I couldn't reserve it for longer than a week, I returned to West Hollywood and the Jeremy Hotel. There were then stays at the Sunset Tower, 60 Beverly Hills, Hollywood Roosevelt, another Airbnb in Malibu, and the Hollywood Hills. Then back to the Chateau. Then the Nomad downtown. The guy's, on crack all over the place. Then he says their stripper girlfriends invited their stripper girlfriends who invited their boyfriends. They drink the entire minibar and we go crazy. So the defendant did not write that he conducted any business on any of those hotels. They weren't doing deals there. And so he needed to pay his taxes. He failed to identify all personal expenses. The defendant met with the CA accountant in person, and they stayed at Borgata. They stayed at Virgin America and Los Angeles flights, $43,000 at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, $7,000 for Airbnb, $8,000 for John Hancock, paid to John Hancock for his personal life insurance. The general ledger also was $11,000 in payments, $975 for the crutch card, and a lot. Now, he said he falsely claimed that money paid to women with whom he had personal relationships was wages. Okay, so he lied about it. He was paying hookers. He said, no, those were my employees. Showed that he paid $86,000 in wages, but he knew that it was a false deduction. He engaged in little to no business activity, but instead, he provided healthcare benefits to 3 women who he had romantic and sexual relationships with, and a 4th woman who was related to one of these women. He's like, yeah, no, I'll put you on my healthcare. Yeah, put your sister on there too. These payroll expenses were treated as business expenses on his form, and so he deducted it from his taxes. Now, person 1, which is London, as Garrett told us, described the above as bringing the paternity suit against the defendant who had been engaged in a romantic relationship, and there's a lot more here. So you can see he falsely identified personal expenses as business deductions. Here, what did he spend? $1,200. He got an airline ticket to fly an exotic dancer from LA to New York. I'll buy your plane ticket. He got $3,800 as a business expense for a Lamborghini. Then he paid $4,400 to a hotel, $11,000 to another hotel, $11,000 to another hotel, $95,000 to another one, Kimpton, London West, $4,300 to Caesar's Palace. Look at all these, man. He circled a $275 dinner with his girlfriend as a business expense. All said and done, 100 travel expenses, $134,000, and he just wrote them all off. And all of it was not accounted for. So you can see, they say in truth, Hunter used the business line of credit to pay for all sorts of stuff, and none of it was legitimate. Also paid to daughters of people. The categories of payments were all wrong, and he knowingly filed and signed the false tax returns, fraudulent documents being submitted to the government. Count 7, same thing. Count 8, same thing. He caused to be filed a declaration that he said was true, and he knew it was not true. He did not believe that it was true. Those were hookers, not employees. He earned a ton of money, and he continued this charade for a long time. Those are the charges. This went in front of a grand jury. The 4 persons signed off on it and found that there was enough cause to bring the case against him. And so this is the full indictment, 56 pages, much of it detailed by our good friend Garrett Ziegler at MarcoPoloUSA.org, where you can get a copy of the Hunter Biden report, the report on the Biden laptop, and they could use your support with a dono or with a purchase or something, because they're facing some pretty monstrous people on the other side. And so we, of course, will be here continuing to cover the Hunter Biden saga and more, my friends. We look forward to having you subscribe. Thank you for checking out RobertGovea.com to sign up for our daily daily newsletter, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you there and here on the next one.